Hello and welcome to Spectrum News at 4. My name is Janice Cobham, coming to you live from the beautiful hills of Ibiakuran. Let's take a look at the headlines. President Muhammadu Buhari approved 3 orthopedic. ASU begins consultation on next move over strike action. Plus, deadly blast reportedly rips through crowded Kabul mosque in Afghanistan. We will bring you details of these stories and more in a moment. Thanks for joining us on the news at 4. First in our news today is a report that President Muhammadu Buhari has approved the establishment of 3 additional orthopedic hospitals. Health Minister Osage Ehanire made the announcement at the inauguration of the Primary Healthcare PHC Leadership Challenge at the State House. The event was organized by the Nigerian Governors Forum NGF in collaboration with development partners. Ehanire disclosed that the president approved the siting of the orthopedic hospital in 3 regions, with 1 each in the northeast, the north central, and the south-south, situated in Benin, Jos, and Jalingo, respectively. Meanwhile, the finance minister Zainab Ahmed said 471 billion 9 million naira had been disbursed to states under the World Bank's State Fiscal Transparency, Accountability and Sustainability SFTAS program. She added that all the 36 states had fully domesticated the fiscal reforms in the public financial management system. And away from that now, the federal government has justified its inability to achieve its promised 5,000 megawatts electricity generation for the country due to shortage in gas supply. The Minister of Power, Abubakar Aliyu, who disclosed this at the Federal Executive Council FEC meeting presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari at the State House in Abuja, said government had entered into a firm contract with the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading NBETS PLC. Power generation had remained around 4,000 megawatts because of the challenge of gas supply. He further explained that the drop of electricity supply has many contributory factors, which include the cost issues of gas to some power plants. In a separate development, the federal government has concluded plans to enforce a ban on foreigners purchasing agri-commodities at the farm gates. Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment Otumba Adeniyi Adebayo made this known while inaugurating an interministerial standing committee in Abuja. Adebayo said the document had been presented by the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment and Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development on March 9 this year for approval by the Federal Executive Council FEC. Adebayo said the move was part of the government's efforts to provide an enabling environment for the commodity subsector to thrive. He decried the exploitation of farmers by foreigners who come to Nigeria to mop up agricultural commodities at the farm gates and in turn offer farmers prices below market value. He charged the committee to come up with appropriate implementation mechanism and guidelines for implementing the approved FEC memo, as well as liaise with states, local government and other relevant stakeholders nationwide to enforce the ban and compliance. Meanwhile, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development has refuted claims that it spent 18.9 billion naira on bush clearing during the COVID-19 lockdown in 2020. The ministry, in a statement by its Director of Information, Dr. Joel Uruche, noted that the statements, which emanated from the House Public Accounts Committee, must have been quoted out of context. According to the statement, the ministry did not receive any audit query to warrant summon by the committee. It noted that the ministry only carried out bush clearing and land preparation of 3,200 hectares in 8 states, namely Osun, Ekiti, Edo, Cross River, Kaduna, Kwara, Plateau, Ogun, as well as located by state governments for 2.5 billion naira. Other projects executed by the ministry during the COVID-19 pandemic, which included the construction of rural roads in the 6 geopolitical zones, soil sampling and mapping, farmers registration, as well as rehabilitation and the equipping of 4 national soil laboratories. It added that the projects were executed and verified by relevant government agencies and were part of a stimulus package under the Agriculture for Food and Jobs program of the federal government to generate employment and grow the economy to mitigate the effect of COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. We move to education now, where in an attempt to curb examination malpractices, the Minister of Education, Adamu, has warned schools nationwide to tighten the nose on examination malpractice. This was as he urged examiners to work closely with law enforcement agencies to crack down on examination malpractice. Adamu made the call at the 47th session of the State House ministerial briefing organized by the Presidential Communications team at the Aso Rock Villa, Abuja. According to him, despite efforts to raise the integrity of the examination system in schools nationwide, the ministry still grapples with malpractice perpetrated both at the exams council and school levels. He lauded the Joint Admission Matriculation Boards for its efforts at stemming malpractice, saying more work needs to be done. And meanwhile, the National Strike Organizing Committee of the Academic Staff Union of Universities has met to decide on the way forward concerning the ongoing strike by the union. The committee, which is made up of senior officials of the union, also noted that zonal meetings will commence by the end of the week, after which branches would go ahead with congresses. Meanwhile, ASU President Professor Emmanuel Osodoke has urged Nigerian students not to vote for politicians who have their children studying in institutions outside the country. Osodoke spoke on a Twitter Space webinar organized by Premium Times tagged ASU Strike Revitalization Fund and the Way Forward. Recall that the recent meeting the union had with the federal government ended in a deadlock on Tuesday. On power generation, the National Union of Electricity Employees, NUEE, has called off its nationwide strike. The decision followed an emergency meeting with the Minister of Labour and Employment, Chris Ngige, on Wednesday. The minister's spokesman, Olajide Oshondun, announced that Ngige intervened in the industrial action. Meanwhile, NUEE Secretary General Joe Ajero has assured that electricity would be restored across the country. Recall that the workers shut down all transmission companies of Nigeria TCN offices yesterday. In another development, the Central Bank of Nigeria, Governor Godwin Emefiele, has disclosed that from next week, Nigerians would be able to transact on e-Naira wallet through the unstructured Supplementary Service Data USSD code on mobile phones. The e-Naira, which is a central bank digital currency backed by law and issued by the CBN as a legal tender, is the digital form of the Naira used as cash. The CBN boss, who announced this at the grand finale of the 2022 e-Naira Hackathon in Abuja, said aside from transacting, Nigerians can also open an e-Naira wallet on any phone of their choice through the designated USSD code. According to him, Nigerians will only have to dial *997# from their phones to carry out transactions on their phones. On financial crime, the executive chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, Abdul Rashid Bawa, has said the commission had secured 4,430 convictions in 19 months. The EFCC boss said the war against corruption is a worthy fight to save the soul of Nigeria and secure the future generations. He urged the media to expose the corrupt in the society instead of celebrating them. Bawa, who spoke at a workshop on economic and financial crimes reporting for journalists in Abuja, said the EFCC's conviction rates were unbeaten in Africa, adding that the commission was prepared to protect the naira from abuse by those he called crooks and foreign exchange black marketers. We move now to Lagos, where the government has extended the ban on commercial motorcycles or CADA to 4 more local government areas in 5 local councils, development areas. The Commissioner for Transport, Dr. Frederick Oladende, who confirmed this, said the decision was taken after a review of the earlier ban on commercial motorcycles operations in 6 local councils. The additional councils where the total Okada ban is pronounced include Kosho Fair Local Government Area, Oshodi Isolo Local Government, Shomolu Local Government, and Mushin Local Government. Others are Ikosi Sheri LCDA, Agboyi Ketu LCDA, Isolo LCDA, Bariga LCDA, and Odiolowo LCDA. Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has ordered full enforcement from September 1, 2022. And elsewhere in Ondo State, members of the Association of Resident Doctors ARD at the Federal Medical Center Owo have begun a 2-week warning strike over death of personnel. President of the Owo FMC ARD, Dr. Olaokwa Olutobi Gideon, said the strike action was inevitable as they were working under their stressful conditions. According to Olaokwa, there were only 80 resident doctors and health officers in the employment of the hospital because no employment has been carried out in the hospital since 2018. Reports say the doctors shut down services at the hospital after the association's general meeting AGM in Owo local government area. We move now to Africa, where a prominent Chadian rebel leader, Timan Edimi, who has been in exile for years after trying to overthrow former President Idris Itno, has returned to N'Djamena 2 days before a national dialogue before the civilian and armed opposition and the ruling junta. Edimi, the leader of the Union of Resistance Forces UFR, whose columns that were melting on the capital in 2019 were stopped due to the bombing of planes of the French army, had been sentenced in absentia to life imprisonment. According to reports, the 67-year-old Edimi is due to take part from Saturday in a major inclusive national dialogue, which should lead to free and democratic elections and the transfer of power to civilians. And still in Africa, at least 26 people have reportedly been killed and dozens more injured in forest fires that have devastated northern Algeria. The country's Interior Minister Kamel Beldjoud said 24 died in El Taf near the border with Tunisia, as well as a mother and daughter in Sétif. Reports say 350 residents have been evacuated in various provinces. The Civil Protection Agency said that El Taf was the worst hit area in 16 fires in progress. On the foreign scene, Chinese planes are firing roads into the sky to bring more rainfall to its crucial Yangtze River, which has dried up in parts as swaths of the nation fall into droughts and is faced with the worst heat wave on record. Several regions on the Yangtze have launched weather modification programs, but with cloud cover too thin, operations in some drought-ravaged parts of the river's basin have remained on standby. China's Ministry of Water Resources said in a notice that drought throughout the Yangtze River basin was adversely affecting drinking water, security of rural people and livestock, and the growth of crops. Reports say central China's Hubei province became the latest to announce it would seed clouds using silver iron-dyed rods to induce rainfall. At least 4.2 million people in Hubei have been affected by a severe drought since June. Hubei's Provincial Emergency Management Department said more than 150,000 people there have difficulties accessing drinking water, and nearly 4,000 hectares of crops have been damaged because of high temperature and droughts. And still on the foreign scene, Kabul police have a huge explosion has reportedly ripped through a crowded mosque in the Afghan capital Kabul, killing 21 people with 33 people injured. Kabul police spokesman Khalid Zadran said Wednesday's blast occurred during evening prayers, adding that the mosque imam is reported to be among the dead. Recall that a week after an Islamic State's militants killed a pro-Taliban cleric and a suicide bomb blast also in Kabul. The head of the medical charity Emergency, which runs the city's main hospital, told newsmen the BBC his group had already treated 35 people, including children. And still to come in the news, Falconets beat Canada 3-1, face Holland in quarterfinals. To stay with us. Go. Many thanks for still being there. Now to the rest of our stories. On our business news, power generation and distribution companies owe Nigerian banks 830.09 billion naira amid the lingering problems plaguing the sector since it was privatized over 8 years ago. This is according to the Central Bank of Nigeria's June 2022 data. Reports say while power generation firms and independent power producers owed banks 562.19 billion naira, power transmission and distribution firms were indebted to the tune of 273.89 billion naira. Recall that the federal government officially privatized the 6 successor power generation companies and 11 distribution firms that were unbundled from the defunct Power Holding Company of Nigeria. The acquisition by the core investors were financed mostly by debts, a significant portion of which was provided by local banks. And still in business news, Emirates Airlines has announced the suspension of its flight operations in Nigeria from September 1, 2022. It said the suspension became necessary following its inability to repatriate its funds from Nigeria. International carriers operating in Nigeria said they have repeatedly complained about their inability to repatriate funds to their home countries and have raised these concerns on many occasions with officials of the Federal Ministry of Aviation as well as those at the Finance Ministry. Reports say blocked funds belonging to these airlines have risen to about $600 million, stressing that the issue is due to the inability of the Central Bank of Nigeria to make the United States dollar available for the carriers to repatriate. In its statement, Emirates Airlines stated that it has tried every avenue to address the challenges in repatriating funds from Nigeria and have made considerable efforts to initiate dialogue with the relevant authorities for their urgent intervention to help find a viable solution. It, however, noted that should there be any positive developments in the coming days regarding Emirates' blocked funds in Nigeria, the airline would, of course, re-evaluate its decision. In health now, members of the Nigeria Governors Forum, have pledged to progressively allocate more of their state resources to primary health care through efficient budgeting aligned to annual operational plans. They are also pledged prompt release of the approved budgets to their state's primary healthcare boards and primary healthcare facilities. The forum's chairman, Kayode Fayemi of Ekiti State, gave the pledge at the forum's meeting at the State House, Abuja. Fayemi said the governors would recruit the required quantity and quality of the workforce in all primary healthcare facilities in line with the minimum staffing requirements appropriate for their level according to each state's minimum service package. Still in health, the UK government has announced that thousands of people in Britain infected with HIV and hepatitis C through contaminated blood transfusion will receive a compensation payment decades after the scandal. The government said the tax-free payments to survivors of the scandal and bereaved partners of the thousands estimated to have died from the contaminated blood would be made by the end of October. Recall that thousands of people with hemophilia contracted hepatitis C and HIV after receiving blood transfusions mainly from the United States through the State National Health Service (NHS) in the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s. Reports say due to a shortage of blood products in Britain, the NHS bought much of its stock from US suppliers whose donors, including prisoners and other groups at high risk of infection, had been paid for the blood. Meanwhile, an estimated 2,400 patients died after being infected through contaminated blood products in the 1970s and 1980s. In sports now, the race for the 5 tickets available for African countries for the 2023 FIBA Basketball World Cup has tightened up, and it has prompted teams to select some of their best talented players. While African basketball fans are familiar with the names of most of their outstanding players, there are a few faces that are yet to make their names heard and talked about across African arenas. Among the 10 new stars expected to shine at the qualifiers include the Tigers' Josh Okoje. Before making his debut for Nigeria at the 2019 FIBA Basketball World Cup, the 23-year-old had featured for the US in the 2017 FIBA Under-19 basketball in Cairo. Reports say this will be his first appearance on the continent of Africa with a Nigerian uniform on. Meanwhile, from August 26 to 28, the remaining 12 teams will compete in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire, and Monastir, Tunisia, where 10 players are set to break out in Window 4 of the World Cup African qualifiers. And still in sports, Nigeria's under-20 girls Falconets set a World Cup group stage perfect record for themselves after beating Canada 3-1 in the Aladiola to finish with a perfect 9 points out of 9 in Group C. Head coach Chris Musa had said before the encounter that his girls would seek to win even as a quarterfinal ticket was already in the bag, in order to sustain their winning mentality following hard-fought victories over France and Korea Republic. Africa's best team conceded their first goal of the competition in an accidental manner following goalkeeper Omini Onyono's poor management of a back pass from Jumoke Alani that granted Carla Novak a 42ers goal in less than 2 minutes. Midfielder impresario Esther Onyezede, whose vicious coiling shots earned all 3 points against Korea Republic to send the Falconets into the last 8 on Monday morning, scored from the penalty spot in the 24th minute to pull the Falconets level.
Corner, same results. Nigeria have turned it around.
On our entertainment news, singer Peter Okoye, popularly known as Mr. P, has taken a swipe at jobless graduates with misplaced priorities. The P-Square twin and opposed cheated graduates who do not deploy their smartphones for productivity, especially in social media. According to him, despite being without a job, many graduates strive to get smartphones, making a case for those responsible for their joblessness. And still on entertainment, the Lagos State Police Command has reacted to popular singer Buju BNXN's statement that he spat on a police officer during a confrontation. The singer took to his Twitter on Wednesday in the tweet he later deleted, saying he just spat on a police officer and it felt so good. Reacting, Lagos Police Command spokesperson Benjamin Hundayin said the police officers involved will be sanctioned for their misbehavior. He, however, stated that if Buju is guilty, on the other hand, he will answer for assaulting an officer. And that's all we have for you in the news at this hour. Do also follow us on all our socials and subscribe to our YouTube page, all of which you can find on our website at spectrumtv.ng. You have been watching Spectrum News at 4. My name is Janice Kogan. Do have a great evening.